They said a single man couldn't raise 5 abandoned sisters. Years later, at his retirement party, when his daughters took the stage, the entire room froze at their announcement. Marcus Thompson's fork scraped against the fine china plate, the sound echoing through the massive dining room. He sat alone at the head of a table meant for 20, his dinner getting cold as he stared at the empty chairs. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 8, its chimes bouncing off the marble floors and high ceilings. He pushed away his half-eaten steak and loosened his blue silk tie. The house staff had left for the day, leaving him in the silence he'd grown accustomed to over the past 2 years. His footsteps echoed as he walked to the kitchen, plate in hand. The buzzing of his phone broke through the quiet. Another message from his assistant about tomorrow's board meeting. Marcus deleted it without reading. Instead, his eyes fixed on the background photo, Sarah, his late wife, smiling from their last vacation together. "I miss you," he whispered, his voice rough. He cleared his throat and straightened his shoulders. CEO of Thompson Industries didn't cry in his kitchen on a Tuesday night. The memory hit him anyway. Sarah in her hospital bed, gripping his hand, her voice weak but determined. "Promise me you'll find a way to fill this house with love, Marcus. All these rooms. They were meant for children's laughter." His phone buzzed again. This time, it was Janet, his VP of Corporate Social Responsibility. "Marcus? Sorry to call so late, but I needed to confirm you're still joining us for the orphanage visit tomorrow." He rubbed his eyes. "The what?" "Hope Sisters Orphanage? The new community outreach program we discussed last week? You agreed to make a personal appearance, right?" He vaguely remembered signing off on something. "What time?" 9 a.m. "It's a great photo op. And the press will dash." "No press," he cut her off. "This isn't about publicity." After hanging up, Marcus walked through his empty house, past unused guest rooms and pristine hallways. He stopped at what should have been a nursery. Sarah had picked out the color scheme, soft yellows and greens. Now it was his home office, all mahogany and leather. Sleep didn't come easily that night. He tossed and turned, Sarah's words echoing in his mind. The house felt too big, too quiet, too empty. The next morning, Marcus arrived at Hope Sisters Orphanage exactly at 9. The building was old but well-maintained, with a small playground visible through a chain-link fence. Janet waited at the entrance, tablet in hand. "The director's ready for us," she said, leading him inside. "Remember, we're considering a significant donation dash." The sound of laughter interrupted her. 5 girls ran past them in the hallway, the youngest one trailing behind the others. "Girls!" a stern voice called out. "No running inside." The smallest girl skidded to a stop right in front of Marcus. She looked up at him, dark eyes wide, her hair in perfectly done braids. A smile broke across her face, missing 2 front teeth. Something in Marcus's chest tightened. "Sarah, come here this instant." The voice belonged to Mrs. Rodriguez, the orphanage director, who hurried toward them. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Thompson. The girls get excited before lunch." "Sarah." The name caught in his throat. "Yes, our youngest sister group. Sarah's 6. Then there's Maya, 8, Olivia, 10, Rachel, 12, and Jasmine's 14. Mrs. Rodriguez sighed. "They've been with us for 8 months now." "Their mother. Is there a problem?" Marcus asked, watching as Sarah rejoined her sisters at the end of the hallway. Mrs. Rodriguez hesitated. "Their situation is complicated. Perhaps we should discuss this in my office." The office was small and cluttered with files. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled out a thick folder. Their mother struggled with addiction. She disappeared 8 months ago, leaving them alone in their apartment. Neighbors called social services. She paused. "We're having trouble placing them, because there are 5 of them. Partly. We try to keep siblings together, but 5 is..." She shook her head. "Most families want younger children, or fewer children. Or some families have expressed concern about their race, about their background, about taking on children with potential trauma." Marcus's jaw tightened. He remembered similar conversations from his own childhood, snippets overheard outside foster homes and orphanage offices. "May I meet them? Properly?" Mrs. Rodriguez blinked in surprise. "Of course. But, Mr. Thompson, we're grateful for your company's interest in supporting our facility, but these girls aren't a charity project. They need stability, love, understanding dash. I grew up in Highland Boys' Home, Marcus interrupted. I know what they need. The director's expression changed. I had no idea. Few people do. He stood up. The girls? They found the sisters in the small library. Jasmine, the oldest, sat with Sarah in her lap, reading a story. The others clustered around them on worn bean bags. They looked up when Marcus entered. Girls, Mrs. Rodriguez said softly. This is Mr. Thompson. He'd like to talk with you. Jasmine's arms tightened around Sarah. The other girls moved closer together, a practiced defensive formation. Marcus sat on the floor, his expensive suit touching the worn carpet. What are you reading? Sarah held up the book. Matilda. Marcus smiled. The story of a very smart girl who finds her family. Do you know it? Sarah asked. I do. I read it when I was in a place like this. 5 pairs of eyes fixed on him. You lived in an orphanage. Maya, the 8-year-old, asked. I did. For 6 years. What happened to your parents? Olivia, 10, scooted forward slightly. I don't know. They left me when I was 4. Jasmine studied him, her expression guarded. But you're rich now. Marcus nodded. I work hard. Had some luck. Built my company. Why are you here? Jasmine's voice was challenging. Jasmine, Mrs. Rodriguez warned. No, it's a fair question. Marcus met the teenager's gaze. I'm here because my house is too empty. Because my wife and I always wanted children but couldn't have them. Because she made me promise to fill our home with love before she died. Sarah wiggled free from Jasmine's lap and walked over to Marcus. She touched his cheek, where an unexpected tear had fallen. Don't cry, she said. We can share our book with you. That night, Marcus sat in his dining room again. But instead of silence, he heard Sarah's voice reading Matilda, saw Maya's curious eyes, felt the weight of Jasmine's protective gaze. His phone lay on the table, Mrs. Rodriguez's words echoing in his mind. The state wants to separate them. We're running out of time. Marcus picked up the phone and dialed. Mrs. Rodriguez? About the girls. I'd like to discuss adoption requirements. The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds. All of them? She finally asked. Marcus looked around his empty mansion, imagining it filled with voices, laughter, life. All of them. The Thompson Industries boardroom fell silent. 12 pairs of eyes stared at Marcus as if he'd lost his mind. 5 children. Richard Chen, the CFO, broke the silence. Marcus, with all due respect, have you thought this through? Marcus stood at the head of the table, his hands pressed flat against the polished surface. I have. You're talking about adopting 5 black children. Patricia Wells, head of PR, leaned forward. The media will have a field day. A single white CEO dash. I don't care about the media. Marcus's voice cut through the room. You should. Patricia shot back. This could affect our stock prices, our public image dash. They're children, not a PR crisis. Marcus's knuckles turned white against the table. Richard cleared his throat. Marcus, it's not just about public perception. You're running a Fortune 500 company. How do you plan to raise 5 traumatized children alone? The same way I run this company. With dedication, resources, and support. Janet, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. What about your schedule? The international meetings, the conferences, the dash, I'll adapt. Marcus pulled up a chair and sat down. Look, I know this seems sudden, but I've spent the last 2 weeks visiting these girls. Getting to know them. They are smart, resilient, and they need a home. There are other ways to help, Richard said softly. We could set up a foundation, fund the orphanage dash. They don't need a benefactor. They need a father. The room fell silent again. Marcus looked at each board member in turn. I built this company from nothing. Turned it into what it is today. Trust me to know what I'm doing. After the meeting, Marcus drove straight to Hope's sister's orphanage. Ms. Carter, the social worker assigned to the girls' case, waited in Mrs. Rodriguez's office. Mr. Thompson, Ms. Carter didn't smile. I've reviewed your application. Marcus sat down, noting the thick file on her desk. Your financial status is impressive, she continued. But money isn't everything. I agree. Do you? She leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, raising 5 children is challenging for a 2-parent household. For a single father with no parenting experience, working 60+ hours a week. She shook her head. And then there's the cultural aspect. You mean because I'm white? These girls have experienced trauma, displacement, and loss of cultural identity. They need stability, love, security. Marcus met her gaze. I know what it's like to be in the system, to feel unwanted, different. This isn't about your past, Mr. Thompson. A knock interrupted them. Jasmine stood in the doorway, her expression wary. Sorry, she said. Mrs. Rodriguez said you wanted to see me. Ms. Carter softened her voice. Yes, come in, Jasmine. We're discussing your potential adoption. Jasmine's eyes darted between them. All of us. Mr. Thompson has applied to adopt all 5 of you. Jasmine's face hardened. Why? Marcus turned to face her fully. Because you deserve to stay together. To have a home. In your fancy mansion. Her voice dripped with skepticism. With your fancy cars and fancy life? What's the catch? No catch. There's always a catch. Jasmine crossed her arms. Everyone wants something. Marcus stood up slowly. Can we talk? Just us? Ms. Carter started to object, but Marcus held up a hand. In the hallway, where you can see us. 5 minutes. In the hallway, Jasmine kept her distance, back against the wall. When I was 6, Marcus said, my foster father told me he was keeping me. Said I was special. 2 weeks later, he sent me back because I wasn't the right fit. He watched understanding flicker across Jasmine's face. That happened 3 more times before I aged out of the system. Jasmine's arms loosened slightly. How many homes? 11. Plus the orphanage. What happened? After? I worked, studied, got a scholarship, built my company. Marcus paused. But I never had a real home. Never had family. Until your wife. Until Sarah. She taught me what family meant. He smiled sadly. She would have loved you girls. Jasmine studied him for a long moment. The others, they are excited. About you. Especially Sarah. And you? I don't trust easily. Good. You shouldn't. Trust needs to be earned. Back in the office, Ms. Carter had more questions. Hours of questions. About his schedule, his support system, his plans for childcare, education, cultural awareness. The girl's current foster family reports behavioral issues, she said. Especially with Olivia and Maya. Are you prepared for that? I've already found a family therapist who specializes in adoption trauma. And I'm researching schools with diverse student bodies and strong support services. Ms. Carter made more notes. In your work schedule, I'm promoting my COO to handle daily operations. I'll focus on strategic decisions. Work primarily from home. You've thought this through. I have. She closed her file. There's still the matter of the home study. And the girl's mother technically hasn't terminated her parental rights. But she's been gone for 8 months. 9 now. Ms. Carter sighed. Look, Mr. Thompson, I'll be honest. The state wants to separate them. 5 siblings. Their ages, it's hard to keep them together. Most potential adoptive parents only want Sarah. Maybe Maya. Marcus's jaw clenched. That's not happening. Then you need to be sure. Because if you start this process and change your mind, I won't. That evening, Marcus had dinner with the girls in the orphanage cafeteria. Sarah insisted on sitting next to him, showing him a drawing of what she thought his house looked like. Does it really have a swimming pool? Maya asked. It does. And a library. Olivia's eyes widened. Like in Beauty and the Beast. Not quite that big, Marcus laughed. But plenty of books. Rachel, usually quiet, spoke up. Will we each get our own room? If you want. Or you can share. Whatever makes you comfortable. Jasmine watched the excitement build among her sisters. When will we know? The process takes time, Marcus said carefully. There are lots of meetings, paperwork, visits. But I'm not giving up. Sarah tugged his sleeve. Promise? Marcus looked at each girl in turn, ending with Jasmine. I promise. No matter what anyone says. No matter how long it takes. I'm not giving up on us being a family. That night, his empty house felt different. Walking through the rooms, he could imagine them filled with life. Sarah's drawings on the fridge. Maya's books scattered around. Olivia's music playing. Rachel's quiet presence in the garden. Jasmine's watchful eyes making sure everyone was safe. His phone buzzed. A text from Richard. Board wants an emergency meeting tomorrow. 8 a.m. Marcus sent back one word. No. Another buzz. Marcus, be reasonable. He typed, I am. Family comes first. 3 months of paperwork, interviews, and home studies led to this moment. Marcus stood in his driveway, watching the social services van pull up to his house. His hands shook slightly as he straightened his casual sweater. No suit today, on Ms. Carter's advice. The van doors opened, and chaos erupted. Sarah bounded out first, her backpack bouncing. Maya and Olivia tumbled after her, while Rachel stepped out carefully, clutching a worn book to her chest. Jasmine emerged last, carrying 2 duffel bags. "This is really your house?" Olivia stopped dead in her tracks, mouth open. "It's our house now," Marcus corrected gently. Sarah ran straight to him, wrapping her arms around his legs. "Can we see our rooms? Please, please, please." Ms. Carter climbed out of the van, carrying more bags. "Girls, remember what we talked about?" Calm and orderly dash, but Sarah was already pulling Marcus toward the front door, the others following with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Inside, 5 pairs of eyes took in the grand entrance hall, the sweeping staircase, the crystal chandelier. "It's like a castle," Maya whispered. "3rd floor is all yours," Marcus said. "Each room is set up, but you can change anything you don't like." They thundered up the stairs, their excitement echoing off the walls. Ms. Carter gave Marcus a pointed look. "Remember, Mr. Thompson, consistency is key. They need structure, boundaries dash." A crash from upstairs cut her off, followed by Sarah's voice. "Oops." Marcus took the stairs 2 at a time, Ms. Carter behind him. They found a broken vase in the hallway, Sarah standing nearby with tears welling up. "I'm sorry," she burst out. "I didn't mean to. Please don't send us back." Marcus's heart cracked. He knelt beside her, careful of the ceramic shards. "Hey, it's just a vase. Are you hurt?" Sarah shook her head, sniffling. "Then it's okay. We'll clean it up together." "But it looked expensive," Jasmine said from her doorway, tension in her voice. "Things can be replaced," Marcus said firmly. "You girls can't." While Marcus and Sarah cleaned up, the others explored their rooms. Maya gasped at her wall-to-wall bookshelf. Olivia discovered the music system in hers. Rachel found her art supplies laid out on a desk by the window. Jasmine stood in her room last, taking in the space. "You didn't have to do all this." Marcus leaned against her doorframe. "I wanted to. Is the color okay? We can change it." She ran a hand over the deep purple walls. "It's nice." "Dinner's in an hour," he said. "The chef's making pizza. From scratch. We have a chef. Just for special occasions. Like today." Dinner started well. Fresh pizza, 5 chattering voices, Sarah bouncing in her seat. Then Olivia knocked over her glass, juice spreading across the white tablecloth. "Stupid," she muttered, reaching for napkins. "It's fine," Marcus started, but Olivia was already up, chair scraping back. "I'm not hungry anymore." Olivia, wait dash, but she ran from the room. Rachel quietly began cleaning up the spill while Maya watched with big eyes. Jasmine stood up. "I'll go." "No," Marcus said. "Let me." He found Olivia in her room, curled into a ball on her bed. "Go away." Marcus sat on the floor instead. "You know, my first night in my first foster home, I broke a plate. Dropped it right on the kitchen floor." Olivia sniffed. "What happened?" "They sent me back the next day." She turned to face him, eyes wide. "But that's not happening here," Marcus continued. "Ever. You could break every dish in that kitchen, and you'd still be my daughter." "You don't mean that." "Try me." Later that night, after showers and teeth brushing and multiple glasses of water, Marcus attempted bedtime. Sarah wanted 3 stories. Maya couldn't find her stuffed elephant. Rachel needed her nightlight adjusted just right. Finally, only Jasmine was still awake, sitting on the window seat in her room. "Everything okay?" Marcus asked. "They're excited now," she said quietly. "But what happens when it gets hard? When we mess up? When we're too much?" Marcus sat across from her. "Want to know something? I'm terrified." She looked at him in surprise. "I've never been a father. I'm going to make mistakes. But here's what I know. You 5 are my daughters now. Nothing changes that. You can't promise that." "Actually, I can. It's in all the paperwork I signed." He smiled slightly. "But more importantly, it's in here." He touched his heart. "You're stuck with me, kid?" Jasmine didn't smile back, but her shoulders relaxed slightly. A scream pierced the night, Sarah, having a nightmare. By the time Marcus reached her room, Jasmine was already there, holding her little sister. Bad dream? Marcus asked from the doorway. Sarah nodded, tears streaming. About Mom. Marcus's chest tightened. He sat on the edge of the bed. Want to talk about it? She left again. Sarah's voice was small. And then you left too. Come here, sweetheart. He opened his arms, and after a moment's hesitation, Sarah crawled into them. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. Promise. Jasmine watched them, her expression unreadable. The next morning brought new challenges. 5 different breakfast preferences. Lost shoes. School bus confusion. I can drive you, Marcus offered, but Jasmine shook her head. We need to learn the bus route. By 9 a.m., the house was quiet again. Marcus sat in his home office, staring at his phone. 3 missed calls from work, 7 emails marked urgent. Then his phone buzzed, a text from Rachel's teacher. Rachel seems withdrawn in class. Can we schedule a meeting? Another from Olivia's school. Incident during recess. Please call. Marcus took a deep breath and called for an emergency family meeting that evening. They gathered in the living room, the girls tense and quiet. Today was hard, he started. For all of us. But that's okay. We're learning together. So let's make some rules that work for everyone. Like what? Maya asked. Like morning routines. Homework time. Chores. Chores. Olivia wrinkled her nose. With privileges, Marcus added. Screen time, allowance, special outings. They spent an hour making lists, arguing, compromising. By the end, a rough schedule hung on the fridge, and 5 sets of shoulders looked slightly less tense. That night, Marcus started a new tradition. One story, all of them together in Sarah's room. The little one curled in his lap while the others sprawled across the bed and floor. Once upon a time, he began. There was a lonely man who lived in a very big house. Sarah yawned. Is this about you? Maybe. He smiled. But more importantly, it's about 5 amazing girls who changed his life. Jasmine caught his eye from her spot by the door. For the first time, she didn't look away. Later, after all 5 girls were asleep, Marcus walked through his house, their house. Backpacks by the door, shoes scattered on the stairs. Sarah's drawings already taped to the fridge. His phone buzzed again. Richard Chen. Board meeting tomorrow. Marcus typed back. Can't. Parent-teacher conference. He turned off his phone and headed to bed, listening to the new sounds of his home. Gentle breathing, occasional murmurs, the creak of beds as his daughters settled into sleep. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't be easy. But they were family now. Marcus noticed the missing money on a Tuesday morning. His wallet, usually containing several $100s in cash, was lighter by $200. He checked his recent purchases, trying to remember if he'd spent it somewhere. Dad! Sarah's voice called from upstairs. Maya took my hairbrush. Did not. Maya shouted back. Marcus rubbed his temples. 3 weeks into their new life, and mornings hadn't gotten any easier. He tucked the wallet issue aside for later. Upstairs, he found Sarah and Maya in a tug-of-war over a purple brush. Rachel watched from her doorway, already dressed in her school uniform. Olivia's door remained firmly shut, music blasting from inside. Girls, Marcus used his newly developed parent voice. Sarah, you have your own brush. Maya, give that back. But mine's not as good. Sarah pouted. We'll get you a new one after school. Marcus knocked on Olivia's door. Time for breakfast. The music got louder. Jasmine emerged from her room, fully dressed. I got this. She knocked on Olivia's door. Liv, come on. Don't make him late for work again. The music stopped. Olivia opened her door, eyes rimmed red. Marcus frowned. Everything okay? Fine. Olivia pushed past him, heading downstairs. At breakfast, Marcus watched his daughters carefully. Sarah chatted about her upcoming class presentation. Maya read a book while eating her cereal. Rachel drew quietly in her sketchbook. Jasmine texted someone, probably her new friend from school. But Olivia barely touched her food, shoulders hunched. After the girls left for school, Marcus found himself staring at his wallet again. The timing nagged at him. Yesterday had been a rough day for Olivia. Another failed math test, an argument with her sisters. His phone rang, Olivia's math teacher. Mr. Thompson? We need to discuss Olivia's recent behavior. Marcus sat in his office chair. What happened? She was caught trying to buy snacks for her entire class. With $100 bill. His stomach dropped. When? During lunch break. Mr. Thompson, this isn't the first incident. Last week, she gave away expensive mechanical pencils. Before that, she was sharing candy she claimed you bought her. Marcus closed his eyes. I'll handle it. Thank you for letting me know. He spent the next hour canceling meetings, then drove to Olivia's school. She sat outside the principal's office, legs swinging, not meeting his eyes. The ride home was silent. In his study, Olivia perched on the edge of a leather chair while Marcus leaned against his desk. Want to tell me about the money? Olivia stared at her shoes. Liv, he softened his voice. I'm not angry. I just want to understand. You are angry, she mumbled. You're going to send us back. What? No, never. Why would you think that? Because I'm bad. Olivia burst out. I steal things and fail tests and make everyone mad and dash. She choked on a sob. Marcus knelt in front of her chair. Hey, look at me. You're not bad. Mom said I was. Said I was too much trouble. That's why she left. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Your mother was wrong. And she left because of her own problems, not because of you. Olivia wiped her eyes. I just wanted people to like me. By buying them things? She nodded. Jenny Martinez has lots of friends because she always shares stuff her parents buy her. Oh, sweetheart. Marcus pulled her into a hug. Real friends like you for who you are, not what you can give them. But no one likes me. I like you. Your sisters like you. And the right friends will come. Olivia's small hands clutched his shirt. I'm sorry I stole the money. I know. But we need to talk about consequences. She tensed. You'll pay back the money from your allowance. And you're grounded for 2 weeks. That's it? That's it. But Liv, next time you're feeling like this, talk to me. Or Jasmine. Or the therapist. Okay. She nodded against his chest. That afternoon, Marcus took Olivia to her therapy session while the other girls went home with their after-school sitter. Dr. Chen's office was warm and inviting, with comfortable chairs and art supplies. Olivia, Dr. Chen smiled. And Mr. Thompson, would you like to join us today? Marcus looked at Olivia, who nodded slightly. For the next hour, Olivia talked about the stealing, about her mother's words, about feeling like she didn't belong at her new school. Marcus learned things that broke his heart. How she checked the driveway every morning to make sure his car was still there. How she hoarded snacks in her room, just in case. After therapy, Marcus took Olivia for ice cream. They sat in the park, watching dogs play. Dad! The word still made his heart skip. Yeah. Did your mom leave too? Marcus licked his ice cream cone. She did. I was younger than you. Does it still hurt? Sometimes. But you know what helps? What? Having a new family. People who choose to stay. That evening, during dinner, Marcus noticed changes. Olivia sat closer to him than usual. Her sisters, sensing something was wrong, were gentler with her. Even Sarah shared her dessert without being asked. But the real test came at bedtime. Marcus found Olivia in her room, counting the money in her piggy bank. What's this? To pay you back, she said. I have $37. Keep it. We'll figure out another way. But Dash, how about extra chores instead? Relief flooded her face. Really? Really? Now? Bedtime. He tucked her in, something she usually said she was too old for. As he turned to leave, she caught his hand. Dad? I'm sorry I made things hard. Marcus sat on the edge of her bed. You didn't. You know what you did? What? You trusted me enough to let me help. That's what family does. Later that night, Marcus sat in his study, looking at family photos on his phone. Sarah's gap-toothed grin. Maya lost in a book. Rachel's quiet smile. Jasmine's protective stance. And Olivia, slowly learning to trust. His phone buzzed, a text from Ms. Carter. Monthly check-in tomorrow. Any concerns? Marcus typed back, just normal family stuff. We're figuring it out together. Because they were. One day at a time, one crisis at a time, they were becoming a real family. Not perfect, but real. The next morning, Marcus found a folded paper on his desk, a drawing from Olivia. 5 stick figures and one tall one, standing in front of a big house. At the bottom, she'd written, My family. He pinned it to his bulletin board, right next to his computer screen, where he could see it every day. I hate you. Jasmine's words echoed through the house. You can't tell me what to do. You're not my real father. Marcus stood at the bottom of the stairs, his heart pounding. Jasmine, come back here. We're not done talking. Yes, we are. Her bedroom door slammed so hard the walls shook. Sarah started crying in the living room. Rachel hurried to comfort her while Maya and Olivia watched from the kitchen doorway, eyes wide. The argument had started over something simple, Jasmine missing her curfew by 2 hours. No calls, no texts. Marcus had been ready to call the police when she finally walked in at 11 p.m. He took a deep breath, counting to 10 like Dr. Chen taught him. Girls, go to bed. I'll handle this. But Maya started. Bed. Now. They shuffled upstairs, casting worried glances at Jasmine's closed door. Marcus waited until he heard their doors close before approaching Jasmine's room. Jas? We need to talk. Silence. I was worried sick. Anything could have happened. More silence. I'm not leaving until we discuss this. He heard movement inside, then the click of her window lock. Everything inside him went cold. Jasmine. He tried the door handle. Locked. Jasmine, open this door right now. When no answer came, he slammed his shoulder against the door. It burst open on the second try. The room was empty. The window stood open, curtains billowing in the night breeze. On the street below, a figure in a dark hoodie ran into the shadows. No, no, no. Marcus grabbed his phone, dialing 911 while running downstairs. My daughter, she ran away. The next hour passed in a blur. Police officers took statements. The other girls huddled on the couch, Sarah crying quietly in Rachel's lap. Officers asked questions Marcus could barely process. Any idea where she might go? Friends? Relatives? Previous foster homes? Marcus ran his hands through his hair. I don't. Dad. Maya's small voice cut through his panic. I know where she might be. Everyone turned to look at her. Sometimes she talks about going back, to check on Mom, to the old neighborhood. The police officer straightened. Address. Maya recited an address on the south side of Chicago. The officer radioed it in. Sir, we'll send a car, but you should stay here with your other daughters. Like hell I will. Marcus turned to his neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, who had come over when she saw the police cars. Can you stay with the girls? 20 minutes later, Marcus drove through streets he'd never seen, his GPS guiding him to the address. The neighborhood was run down, with boarded-up windows and graffiti-covered walls. He found Jasmine sitting on the steps of a dilapidated apartment building, hugging her knees to her chest. Go away, she said as he approached. Instead, he sat beside her. This way you lived? She nodded toward a second-floor window. Mom used to sit there, watching for dealers. Said she could spot them by how they walked. Marcus stayed quiet, letting her talk. Last time I saw her, she was sitting there. Promised she'd be back with dinner. Jasmine's voice cracked. She never came back. You took care of your sisters. Had to. Sarah was too little to understand. Maya kept asking when Mom would come home. Olivia stopped eating. Rachel stopped talking. You were just a kid yourself. Doesn't matter. They needed me. She wiped her eyes roughly. Still need me. They do. But you need someone too. I don't need anyone. Bullshit. The word slipped out before he could stop it. Jasmine looked at him in surprise. Sorry, but it's true. Everyone needs someone, Jas. Even tough big sisters. You don't understand, don't I? You think I don't see you checking on your sisters every night? Making sure they eat first? Taking the blame when things break? She stared at the ground. You're not alone anymore, Jasmine. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. What if? She swallowed hard. What if I'm not good enough? What if I mess up and you leave? He turned to face her fully. Like your mom did. She flinched. Not happening. Ever. You know why? Why? Because that's not what fathers do. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You're not my real father. Says who? Some piece of paper? Biology. He shook his head. I'm your father because I choose to be. Because I love you. Because you and your sisters are the best thing that ever happened to me. A police car cruised by slowly. Marcus waved them off. I'm sorry, Jasmine whispered. About what I said. About running. I know. He put an arm around her shoulders, relieved when she didn't pull away. But we need to talk about consequences. She tensed. You scared your sisters half to death. Emeh, I know. 2 weeks grounded. No phone except for emergencies. And you're helping Mrs. Johnson with her garden every weekend. That's it. That's it. He squeezed her shoulder. Ready to go home. She looked up at her old apartment one last time. Yeah, home. The drive back was quiet until Jasmine spoke again. Dad? Thank you. For coming after me. Always will. Kiddo. Always will. They pulled into their driveway at midnight. Before they reached the door, it flew open. 4 girls launched themselves at Jasmine, almost knocking her over. Don't ever do that again. Sarah sobbed. We were so scared, Maya added. I'm sorry. Jasmine hugged them all. I'm so sorry. Later, after everyone was in bed, Marcus found Jasmine in the kitchen getting water. Can't sleep? She shook her head. Keep thinking about Mom. Sitting in that window. Want to talk about her? Maybe tomorrow. Whenever you're ready. She started toward the stairs, then turned back. Dad? Yeah. I love you too. The words hung in the air between them, precious and new. Marcus felt his eyes sting. Love you more, kid. The next morning, a social worker arrived for an unannounced visit. Marcus's heart sank when he saw Ms. Carter's familiar car. But as she observed their chaotic breakfast routine, Jasmine helping Sarah with her hair, Maya reading the cereal box to Olivia, Rachel setting the table without being asked, her expression softened. Mr. Thompson, she said as the girls headed for the school bus. About last night. I know it looks bad, Dash. It looks like family, she interrupted. Real family. Messy, complicated, but real. She closed a notebook and stood up. The 6-month review is coming up, she said. Based on what I've seen, I don't think you have anything to worry about. After she left, Marcus found a note slipped under his office door. In Jasmine's handwriting, thank you for not giving up on us. Even when we make it hard. Especially when we make it hard. He pinned it next to Olivia's drawing, his heart full. Marcus stared at his watch for the 10th time in 5 minutes. Sarah's winter recital started in 20 minutes, and he was still stuck in the office, on a video call that wouldn't end. About the merger timeline, Richard Chen droned on. We need to dash. I have to go, Marcus interrupted. My daughter's recital. Marcus, Richard's voice hardened. This is $100 million deal, and my 6-year-old is playing Rudolph in her first school play. Marcus started packing his laptop. We'll continue tomorrow. The Japanese investors are waiting, Dash. Then they can wait 12 more hours. Marcus ended the call, grabbed his coat, and ran. He made it to the school auditorium just as the lights dimmed. Sarah, in her brown reindeer costume with a glowing red nose, stood center stage. Her face lit up when she spotted him slipping into the back row. The play was exactly what you'd expect from first graders. Forgotten lines, miscues, and adorable chaos. Sarah belted out Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer with more enthusiasm than tune. But to Marcus, it was perfect. His phone buzzed continuously in his pocket. He ignored it. After the show, Sarah ran to him, still wearing her antlers. Did you see me, Dad? Did you see when I did the special dance? You were amazing, sweetheart. He scooped her up, antlers and all. Best Rudolph ever. Mr. Thompson? Sarah's teacher approached them. Could we talk for a moment? Sarah went to join her sisters, who had all come to support her. Marcus braced himself for bad news. I just wanted to say, the teacher smiled, that Sarah's transformation these past months has been remarkable. When she first came to us, she barely spoke. Now look at her. Marcus watched Sarah laughing with her sisters, Jasmine adjusting her crooked antlers. She talks about you constantly, the teacher continued. All the girls do. His phone buzzed again. This time, he pulled it out. 15 missed calls, 37 text messages. Excuse me, he said. I need to take this. In the hallway, he called Richard back. The Japanese pulled out. Richard's voice was flat. Said if the CEO doesn't have time for them, they don't have time for us. Marcus's stomach dropped. I'll call them. Explained Dash. They've already signed with our competitors. A pause. Board wants an emergency meeting. Tomorrow morning. Richard Dash. 8 a.m. sharp. No excuses this time. Marcus. The drive home was subdued. In the rearview mirror, Marcus watched Sarah fall asleep, still wearing her costume. The other girls whispered among themselves, sensing his mood. He carried Sarah to bed, carefully removing her antlers. As he tucked her in, she stirred. "Dad? Was I really good?" "You were perfect." He kissed her forehead. "Get some sleep." Rudolph. In his study, Marcus found the merger paperwork spread across his desk. 3 months of negotiations, gone because he chose a school play over a business call. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Jasmine stood in the doorway. "Everything okay?" "Just work stuff." He tried to smile. "Shouldn't you be in bed?" She came in anyway, perching on the edge of his desk. "You're worried. That obvious." "Huh." Sarah noticed. Asked if you didn't like her play. Marcus rubbed his face. "God, no. The play was wonderful. But I might lose my job because of it." Jasmine went still. "What happens then?" "Hey." He caught her hand. "Nothing happens to us. We're family, no matter what. But the house, school, we have savings. And I built one company, I can build another." She studied him. "You're really choosing us over your company." Every time. The next morning, Marcus walked into the boardroom exactly at 8. 12 grim faces greeted him. "Before we start," he held up a hand, "I want to say something." Richard leaned back. "We're listening. I know I've been distracted lately. Less available. And yesterday, I cost us a major deal." Nods around the table. "But here's the thing. I don't regret it." Marcus, Patricia Wells started. "No, listen. 10 years ago, I would have killed for that merger. 5 years ago, I would have missed 100 school plays for it. But now," he pulled out his phone, showed them his background, all 5 girls at Sarah's play. "Now I have something more important. The company needs a full-time CEO," Richard said quietly. "I know." Marcus smiled. "That's why I'm stepping down." The room erupted in protests. "You can't dash. The shareholders dash. Think about dash." "I have thought about it." Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. "Richard, you're ready. The COO position was just a test run. You'll make a great CEO. And you? I'll keep my shares. Advise when needed. But my family needs me more than this company does." Later that day, Marcus called a family meeting. The girls gathered in the living room, tense and quiet. "I have something to tell you," he started. "Are we poor?" Olivia blurted. "What? No. But you lost your job," Maya said. "We heard you talking." "I didn't lose my job. I chose to change it." He looked at each of them. "Remember when I promised that you girls would always come first?" They nodded. "Well, sometimes that means making hard choices. I'm stepping down as CEO. I'll still work, but differently. More time at home. Because of my play." Sarah's voice wobbled. "Because of all of you. Because I don't want to miss any plays, or games, or art shows, or quiet moments." "But your company," Jasmine said. "You built it. And now I'm building something better." He opened his arms. "Come here. All of you." They piled onto the couch with him, a tangle of limbs and hugs. "Does this mean you'll help with my science project?" Maya asked. "And come to my basketball games?" Olivia added. "And teach me to drive?" Jasmine grinned. "Yes, yes, and absolutely not until you're 30. That night, after bedtime stories and goodnight hugs, Marcus sat in his study looking at his resignation letter. His phone buzzed, a text from Richard. "Board accepted. Press release goes out tomorrow." "Sure about this?" Marcus heard laughter from upstairs, probably the girls having their secret post-bedtime chat. Sarah's reindeer antlers sat on his desk, along with Maya's latest book report, Olivia's basketball schedule, Rachel's art class permission slip, and Jasmine's college brochures. He typed back, "Never been more sure of anything." Then he turned off his phone, climbed the stairs, and followed the sound of his daughter's laughter. Maya stood in front of her classroom, clutching her family photo. Show and tell had seemed like a good idea until now. This is my family," she started, her voice barely audible. "We can't hear you," someone called from the back. "Speak up, Maya," her teacher encouraged. Maya cleared her throat. "This is my family. My sisters and my dad." "But his white," a boy in the front row said. The teacher started to intervene, but another voice piped up. "My cousin's adopted too. Her parents aren't her real parents." Maya's hands started shaking. "He is my real dad." The bell rang before anyone could respond. Maya shoved the photo in her backpack and ran out. She didn't stop running until she reached the playground, where she found her usual hiding spot behind the big oak tree. That's where Jasmine found her during high school lunch break. "Hey, Squirt. Thought I'd find you here." Maya wiped her eyes. "How'd you know?" "Your teacher called Dad. He called me." Jasmine sat next to her. "Want to talk about it?" "They said he's not our real dad." Jasmine was quiet for a moment. "You know what makes someone real? DNA. Love. Choice. Being there." Jasmine pulled out her phone, showed Maya a photo of their biological mother. "She gave birth to us. But Dad? He chose us. Every day, he chooses us." Maya studied the photo. "I don't even remember what she looked like anymore." "That's okay. Is it?" Sometimes I feel like I'm forgetting how to be black." The words hung between them. Jasmine took Maya's hand. "Come with me." They found Marcus in his home office, on a video call. He took one look at Maya's face and said, "I'll call you back," before ending the meeting. "Show and tell?" he asked gently. Maya nodded. "Sit down, both of you." He cleared space on his desk. "I need to tell you something. When I first applied to adopt you girls, a lot of people said I couldn't be a good father to you. Know why? Because you're white." Maya's voice was small. "Yes, and they weren't entirely wrong to be concerned. I can't fully understand your experiences. I can't teach you everything you need to know about your heritage." "Then why dash?" "Because love doesn't care about color." "But," he held up a hand, "that doesn't mean color doesn't matter." "It does. Your identity, your culture, your heritage, they're important parts of who you are. But how can I be black enough when I live here? When I go to this school? When my dad is white?" Marcus looked at Jasmine, who nodded encouragingly. "Maybe it's time we made some changes," he said. The next day, Maya walked into a different classroom. Her new teacher, Mrs. Washington, had warm brown skin and a bright smile. "Welcome to Black History Club," she said. "We're glad you're here." Maya found herself surrounded by girls who looked like her, who understood her hair struggles, who didn't ask weird questions about her family. At home, Marcus made changes too. He hired a black hairstylist to teach him proper hair care. Family movie nights now featured films about black history and culture. Their library filled with books by black authors, featuring black characters. One evening, Maya found him in the kitchen trying to follow a YouTube tutorial on cornrow braiding. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Making a mess of this mannequin head." He frowned at his tangled attempt. "How does Jasmine make it look so easy?" Maya giggled. "Want help? Please." These YouTube ladies are not as instructive as they claim. Together, they practice braiding. Maya taught him the techniques Jasmine had shown her. "Dad, today in Black History Club, we talked about family trees." His hands stilled. "And can I do 2 trees? One for you, and one for my birth family." Marcus turned her to face him. "Of course you can. You don't have to choose between your histories, Maya. You get to have both." "Really? Really?" "In fact," he checked his watch, "get your sisters. There's somewhere we need to go." An hour later, they walked into Ms. Carter's office. "Mr. Thompson, this is unexpected. Maya has questions about her birth family. Medical history, cultural background. Things she has a right to know." Ms. Carter's expression softened. "I'll get the files." That night, the family sat in the living room, going through papers and photos. Maya learned that her grandmother had been a teacher, that she had cousins in Atlanta, that her mother had once been a promising artist. "Just like Rachel," she whispered, looking at their birth mother's sketches. "You want to know something?" Marcus said. "You girls got the best of both worlds. Your strength, your creativity, your beauty, that's from your birth family. And now you have me, too. Extra love doesn't make the first love less real." The next day at school, Maya raised a hand in class. "Yes, Maya." She walked to the front, holding 2 photos. One of her birth mother, one of her current family. "This is my family," she said, her voice strong. "All of them. My history isn't either or. It's both and that makes me not less, but more." After school, she ran to Marcus's car, waving a paper. "Dad, look." It was her family tree project. She'd drawn it like a garden. One strong tree growing up through her birth family's roots, branches spreading wide to include Marcus and her new life. "Beautiful," he said. "Just like you." That weekend, they hosted their first community cookout. Maya's friends from Black History Club came with their families. Mrs. Washington brought her famous potato salad. Even Ms. Carter stopped by. Marcus manned the grill, wearing an apron that said "World's Most Blessed Dad." He'd learned to make proper soul food, though Jasmine still teased him about his first attempt at collard greens. Maya watched her worlds blend together. Her Black History Club friends teaching Sarah double dutch, Olivia playing basketball with Mrs. Washington's son, Rachel showing her art to everyone, Jasmine braiding hair on the patio. Later, as the sun set, Mrs. Washington pulled Marcus aside. "You know," she said, "when Maya first joined my club, I wondered how a white man could raise strong black daughters." Marcus tensed. "But I see it now. You're not trying to erase who they are. You're helping them embrace all of themselves." "I'm trying," he said. "Some days I worry it's not enough. Look around." She gestured to the yard full of laughter and love. "Does this look like not enough?" That night, after everyone left, Maya found Marcus in his study. "Dad?" "Yeah, sweetheart. Remember when I said I was forgetting how to be black?" "I remember. I was wrong. I'm not forgetting anything. I'm learning how to be me. All of me." Marcus hugged her tight. "And who are you?" "I'm Maya Thompson. I'm black. I'm your daughter. And I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be." "Shush!" Jasmine hissed at her sisters. "You'll wake him up." 5 girls crept down the hallway at dawn, trying to contain their excitement. It was Father's Day, and they had been planning this surprise for weeks. Sarah clutched a handmade card to her chest, glitter falling with each step. Olivia carried a tray of slightly burnt toast and crooked pancakes. Maya and Rachel balanced wrapped packages, while Jasmine led the way with coffee. They paused outside Marcus's bedroom door. Through the wood, they could hear his soft snoring. "Ready?" Jasmine whispered. 4 heads nodded. They burst in singing Happy Father's Day at the top of their lungs. Marcus shot up in bed, looking alarmed before breaking into a huge smile. "What's all this?" "Breakfast in bed." Sarah bounced onto the mattress, sending coffee dangerously close to spilling. "We made it ourselves." "Mostly ourselves," Jasmine amended. Mrs. Johnson helped with the coffee. Marcus took in the scene. Burnt toast, misshapen pancakes, coffee probably too strong, and his eyes filled with tears. "Dad!" Olivia looked worried. "Are you okay?" "I'm perfect." He pulled her into a hug, then gathered the others close. "These are happy tears." They piled onto his bed, a tangle of limbs and love, while he opened their gifts. Sarah's card shed glitter everywhere. Maya gave him a book about black fathers raising strong daughters. Rachel had drawn a family portrait. Olivia's gift was a World's Best Dad coffee mug she'd painted herself. Then Jasmine handed him an envelope. Inside was a letter, written in her neat handwriting. "Dear Dad, remember when you said trust needs to be earned? Well, you've earned it 100 times over. Every morning when you learn to do our hair. Every night when you check for monsters under Sarah's bed. Every time you show up to my basketball games or Maya's club meetings or Rachel's art shows or Olivia's parent conferences. You earn it when you chose us. When you fought for us. When you gave up your CEO position to be with us more. But mostly, you earned it by loving us exactly as we are, while helping us become who we're meant to be. So this Father's Day, we have a surprise. A big one. But you'll have to wait until this afternoon. Love, your daughters. Yes, real daughters." Marcus had to wipe his eyes before he could speak. "What surprise?" "It's a secret." Sarah bounced again. "You'll find out at the party," Maya added. "What party?" The girls exchanged glances. "Well," Jasmine drawled, "maybe we invited a few people over." That afternoon, their backyard filled with guests. Mrs. Johnson was there, along with Mrs. Washington from Maya's Black History Club. Ms. Carter came, beaming with pride. Marcus's board members showed up, Richard Chen leading the group. But the biggest surprise came when Dr. Chen arrived with a special guest, Marcus's former social worker from the Highland Boys' Home. "Mrs. Sullivan." Marcus stared at the elderly woman. "How?" "Your girls are very persistent," she smiled. "Found me through the old home's records." Before Marcus could respond, Jasmine called everyone to attention. "Thank you all for coming," she started, standing on the patio with her sisters. "We're here to celebrate our dad, but also to make an announcement." Marcus felt Mrs. Sullivan take his hand. "When Dad adopted us," Jasmine continued, "everyone said it wouldn't work. A single white man couldn't raise 5 black girls. The trauma was too deep, the challenges too big. She paused, looking at her sisters. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Because Dad taught us that family isn't about matching skin or sharing blood. It's about love, choice, showing up every day. Maya stepped forward. So we chose something too. Rachel held up a stack of papers. Olivia grinned. We're changing our middle names. Sarah bounced on her toes. To Sarah Thompson Sullivan. Marcus looked at Mrs. Sullivan, who squeezed his hand. Sullivan. His voice cracked. After the woman who never gave up on you, Jasmine explained. The first person who showed you what real family means. Mrs. Sullivan wiped her eyes. Oh, my boy. Look how far you've come. One by one, the girls read their new full names. Jasmine Thompson Sullivan, Rachel Thompson Sullivan, Olivia Thompson Sullivan, Maya Thompson Sullivan, Sarah Thompson Sullivan. The paperwork's already filed, Jasmine added. Ms. Carter helped. Marcus couldn't speak. Mrs. Sullivan patted his hand. You did good, Marcus, she said softly. You broke the cycle. Gave love instead of pain. Built a family instead of walls. The party flowed around them. Richard Chen cornered Marcus by the grill. Company's doing well, he said. Board misses you. But you made the right choice. They watched Olivia teaching Sarah to dribble a basketball, while Maya showed Mrs. Washington her latest history project. Rachel sat with Mrs. Sullivan, drawing her portrait. Jasmine moved between guest groups, the perfect hostess. How do you do it? Richard asked. 5 teenagers. 4 preteens and 1 teenager, Marcus corrected. And I don't do it. We do it. Together. Later, as the sun set, Ms. Carter pulled Marcus aside. I have something to show you. She handed him a file. The final adoption review. Look at the last page. Marcus opened it. There, in official typescript, recommendation, permanent adoption status confirmed. Family bond evaluated as exceptional. Case closed. No more reviews, Ms. Carter smiled. No more check-ins. They're officially, legally, permanently yours. Marcus looked at his daughters, now gathering everyone for cake. They've been mine since day one, he said. The papers just finally caught up. That night, after guests left and dishes were done, Marcus found his girls in the living room. They had one more surprise, a video they'd made, interviewing each other about their family journey. On screen, Sarah spoke first. He reads me 3 stories every night, even when he's tired. Then Maya. He learned to do our hair. Like, really learned. Better than most of my friends' moms. Olivia. He came to every single basketball game. Even when I didn't play. Rachel. He hung my art in his office. Said it was better than the expensive paintings. Finally, Jasmine. He chose us. Every day, he chooses us again. The video ended with a simple message. Happy Father's Day to our real dad. The one who earned it. Marcus gathered them close. These 5 incredible girls who had healed his heart as much as he'd healed theirs. Best Father's Day ever, he whispered. Sarah yawned against his shoulder. Better than breakfast in bed. Way better. Though the burnt toast was pretty special. It wasn't burnt, Olivia protested. It was, well done. They laughed together. This family built on choice and love and second chances. Dad? Maya asked sleepily. Tell us the story again. About how we became a family. Marcus smiled. Once upon a time, there was a very lonely man who lived in a very big house. 5 voices joined in. Until 5 amazing girls changed his life forever. The Thompson house buzzed with energy. 1 year had passed since the adoption, and the family had planned something special for Marcus's retirement party. The girls had a surprise that none of their guests expected. Is my tie straight? Marcus adjusted his collar for the 10th time. It's fine, Dad. Jasmine swatted his hands away. Stop fidgeting. I'm not fidgeting. You're totally fidgeting, Olivia called from the stairs, where she was helping Sarah with her shoes. The past year had changed them all. Jasmine, now 15, carried herself with quiet confidence. Olivia had made the basketball team. Maya excelled in her Black History Club. Rachel's art hung in a local gallery. And Sarah? She hadn't stopped smiling since their Father's Day celebration. The doorbell rang. Guests began arriving. Board members, teachers, neighbors, friends. Mrs. Washington came with her famous potato salad. Mrs. Sullivan sat in the place of honor near the front. Even Richard Chin showed up early, helping to set up chairs in the backyard. Nervous? Richard asked Marcus. About retiring? No, about letting them do this. Marcus watched his daughters huddled together, whispering and giggling. They've been practicing for weeks. Whatever it is, it's important to them. The backyard filled quickly. Marcus had tried to keep it small, but the girls had other ideas. They'd invited everyone who'd been part of their journey. Ms. Carter, Dr. Chen, the librarian who helped Maya research her family tree, Olivia's basketball coach, Rachel's art teacher. Finally, Jasmine stepped up to the microphone they'd rented. Thank you all for coming, she began. Most of you were here a year ago when 5 scared, angry girls moved into this house. Some of you thought it wouldn't work. She smiled at the board members. Some of you were sure it would fail. A nod to the social workers. And some of you believed in us before we believed in ourselves. She gestured to her sisters, who joined her at the front. Today isn't just about Dad's retirement. It's about something bigger. Maya stepped forward. When Dad adopted us, he didn't just change our lives. He showed us what's possible when someone chooses love over fear, family over fortune, faith over doubt. Olivia took the microphone next, so we decided to do something about it. Rachel, usually shy, spoke clearly. We're starting the Thompson Family Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to keeping sibling groups together in adoption. Sarah bounced forward. No more splitting up sisters. The crowd murmured in surprise. Marcus sat up straighter. Jasmine continued. The foundation will provide resources, support, and advocacy for families willing to adopt sibling groups. We've already received commitments from several corporate sponsors. She grinned at Richard Chen, including Thompson Industries. Marcus looked at Richard, who shrugged. Your daughters are very persuasive. But that's not all, Maya added. Mrs. Washington stood up. The foundation will also offer cultural education and support for transracial adoptive families. Because love may be colorblind, but society isn't. And we need to prepare both parents and children for that reality. One by one, people stood to announce their involvement. Mrs. Sullivan would train prospective parents. Dr. Chen would provide counseling services. Ms. Carter would coordinate with social services. Marcus couldn't speak. His daughters had taken their story, their pain, their healing, their love, and turned it into hope for others. Dad! Sarah tugged his sleeve. Are you crying again? He pulled her into his lap. Happy tears. Remember? The girls gathered around him as Jasmine made one final announcement. We've already identified our first family. A single mom wanting to adopt 4 brothers. The foundation will support her journey, just like this community supported ours. The crowd applauded. Marcus hugged his daughters close. Later, as guests mingled over cake, Mrs. Sullivan found Marcus by the garden. I always knew you'd do something special, she said. From that first day at Highlands, I was just a scared kid who grew into an extraordinary man. She patted his hand. Your girls? They're going to change the world. They already have. Marcus watched them working the crowd. Change my world, at least. As the sun set, the girls gathered everyone for a special presentation. They created a video, interviews with teachers, neighbors, friends, all talking about how the Thompson family had impacted their lives. Mrs. Johnson spoke about learning what real family meant. Mrs. Washington described how Maya's story inspired other adoptive families in their community. Richard Chen admitted he'd been wrong about Marcus's choice to step down. The video ended with a simple question. What makes a family real? The answers came from everywhere. Love, said Sarah. Choice, added Maya. Showing up, Olivia contributed. Understanding, from Rachel. Faith, Jasmine finished. Marcus stood to speak, but Sarah interrupted. Wait! One more surprise. The girls positioned themselves in front of the crowd. Music started playing, Lean on Me. They'd been practicing in secret for months. 5 voices, blending in harmony, singing about the power of family, friendship, and love. As they sang, photos flashed on the screen behind them. Their first morning in the mansion, looking lost and scared, Sarah's school play, Marcus rushing in at the last minute, Olivia's first basketball game, Maya's Black History Club presentation, Rachel's art show, Jasmine's driving lesson, supervised strictly by Richard Chen, not Marcus, The final photo showed them all piled on Marcus's bed that first Father's Day, surrounded by burnt toast and love. The song ended. The crowd wiped tears. Marcus finally spoke. A year ago, everyone said a single white man couldn't raise 5 black girls. He looked at each of his daughters. They were right. I couldn't raise them alone. It took a community. It took love. It took faith. But mostly, it took 5 incredible young women willing to give me a chance. He turned to the crowd. The Thompson Family Foundation isn't just about adoption. It's about possibility. About choosing love over fear. About building bridges where others see walls. Sarah tugged his sleeve again. Dad, can we have cake now? The tension broke. People laughed. The party continued. That night, after guests left and cleanup was done, the family sat in their living room. Just like they had that first night. But everything was different now. Dad, Maya asked. Tell us the story again. One last time. Marcus smiled. Once upon a time, there was a very lonely man who lived in a very big house. Until 5 amazing girls changed his life forever. They all finished together. But that's not the end, Sarah added sleepily. No. Marcus asked. No. Now we're changing other people's lives forever too. Jasmine pulled Sarah close. That's right, little sister. One family at a time. They sat together. This unlikely family built on choice and love, as the stars came out over their home. Not just a house anymore. A home. Filled with laughter, tears, arguments, reconciliations, and most importantly, love. Real love. The kind that chooses. The kind that stays. The kind that changes the world.